come bring us up, please. All right, let's go ahead and.
Okay. A couple weeks ago, Jason reached out to me with some issues that were going on in HR, and I visited with Ryan about it. And then last week, it came back and visited with Jason about it again, and some of the issues were some communication between HR and payroll and things of that nature. And so, in some of my experience, HR and payroll have been in the same department, and I talked to Jason about that, and he didn't feel like it was necessarily a bad idea. So that's what we're here today to talk about. Is that a good idea? Is that what's best for the county? If so, what does that look like? Where do they go? What changes need to be made? All of that. And so, Jason, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, so, I think this is kind of a tough issue that we have here, where the way things have been set up in the past and moving forward, how do we make it more efficient? And I think Jeff's right that combining is a good option. The problem that I have is putting, and I want to combine them, I do, but the problem that Jeff and I talked about yesterday is, for me, that means moving all of auditing, because I can't put one team together to break up another team. And Alicia and Kedron not quite as much, but Alicia especially is a big part of that whole office. She knows how to do every job in that office and that's part of her job description currently. So I don't know the best way to move forward, which is why we're here. This needs to be a discussion between Ryan, Christy, and all of us on how we can build the best, most efficient system as a whole, which includes auditing, payroll, and HR all together.
And part two of the discussion, which we've asked Carrie Hung to come in about 9:30, is rooms to locate. So yesterday I asked Jason to pick a couple of spots in the courthouse that he thought it could work, so that theoretically today we could make a decision. If we don't come to a complete decision on how to structure everything, at least we can come to a decision on where to put them. And so that's my goal today. Is worst case scenario, we walk out here with, here's where they'll go. Best case scenario, we come up with the right structure and the location.
Right. And I tried yesterday to get in touch with Carrie Hong, and I wasn't able to really come up with. And Judge Knapp's also needs to probably chime in a little bit. As much as I disagree with that, I think this is a county building and we should be able to push and shove a little bit and pull.
Idaho code says we can, so I really don't even care to consult the judges if I don't have to. I mean, really, I say they're elected officials like the rest of us. There's no, and again, while they do have say in a courtroom, they do not have say in how it
we just
operates.
have to give them
We just
space.
have to give them space.
So the other thing that I've done, and I haven't looked back on there yet, I sent out a message to see in our counties how many other clerks and counties master calendar their judges. And I'm guessing that, I mean, I know Ada County does. I'm guessing that a few others do. That is going to be, we all know, hit with some pushback. But there again,
That's what you have to do.
I walk around here, and I know we all kind of do, and COVID has been different, but it's not that different, where I think that we could master calendar some of the courtrooms. And there are some that just don't get used that much, and why can't we do one in the morning and have something different go in the same courtroom in the afternoon? Carrie, do you have you probably have the best insight in this room on which courts we could combine.
I'm not familiar with magistrate, but district. I mean, obviously, all the judges do their motion calendar days on Mondays. So Monday is the busiest day in district court.
So why couldn't we have them do
can we
a
go
Monday
back till
and Tuesday?
9:30?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Let's stay on the combining first, then we'll come back to that when Carrie gets here.
Sure.
Since we're kind of on a little bit of a time schedule. So anyway, thoughts on the merger or bringing them together?
So everywhere I've worked, including the Army, actually payroll kind of your HR stuff all fall under your S1 function. They all fall into that thing. And that's kind of the whole thing that I look at is, in the command by function aspect, it makes a lot of sense. Now, like you said, and everybody said, you're going to have an office then that you're going to have some changes internally. We had one staff member that we said to hire a new person. Maybe we need to look at that then, and if you're going to pull people out, we're going to rearrange or do whatever, maybe instead of one, there's two that need to come in then. I mean, because that's what we're understanding, and there's going to be a training aspect. But typically in the command by function, I mean, organizational theory, I mean, that's the first thing that you look at is what functions are we doing? That was a discussion we had with Kyle yesterday. And a lot of your HR stuff, there's a reason why HR and payroll and everybody's right there, because I think then a lot of that internal cohesive team then is the team that does it. But then we are going to be at a loss, because I'm sure that those payroll techs and people then that are out of your office, they're probably not 100% payroll is my bet. They're probably
Keaton's 100%,
Said, but-
Alicia is
50-50, something
Yeah.
in your office
at
though
least
that.
50%, but when Keaton's gone, she's 100%.
So, but that's what I'm saying though, is you can't lose that support staff time, and Keedron's probably a pretty good asset in the office to help keep the ship right, you know, and so that's what I'm saying is if there are changes that we made, we need to consider those ripple effects from the rock going in the pool is, okay, so if people get pulled out, we've said we're gonna increase one, would we increase two then into your office? Because if they're not located and they're not doing that function in your office, then
I think you're off on a different track.
The only way I see a change coming is HR is going to join my office.
I don't. HR does not belong under your office. That's the whole problem. I would not put an HR under your
Payroll
office.
can't move. Payroll's gonna stay, if I
Right.
have a say in it, payroll's gonna stay in my physical
Right.
office. I
Yeah.
can't have them elsewhere.
Why? Help me understand that.
Because we share too much equipment, we share too much work. So when I'm out of balance, I have to be able to communicate with everybody. And in order for me to manage payroll, I've got to be in payroll. There's times I help with payroll. So if payroll's not in my office, how do I help them do their job? How do I know
Yeah.
what's going on with payroll? They use the same printers, a check printer, they use the same program. Filing, there's things that I do that I have to get into payroll files. Budget, for example.
Yeah, I'm thinking more of not necessarily having, the way that we have payroll and HR, where HR is under the commission, I'm thinking more, like, that can remain. I'm just talking about housing them together. But really, I disagree 100% that if anything were to change as far as function from us, HR would come under the
No,
clerk.
HR is not a clerk's function.
It is.
No, it's not.
It
Clerk's functions are only enumerated in code.
The-
Any operation of the county under 828 falls specifically under the county commissioners.
I don't
HR
even want
does
to
not.
argue
I know,
about
but
that.
HR does not go under an elected official's specific office. That's
So-
the whole point of HR. HR is going to get put out in the middle of nowhere. That's the intent. The reason they came here was because we had a mainly broken HR department that never worked.
And I'll disagree with you there.
No, it didn't work.
There-
It didn't work.
From a payroll aspect, HR was not broken.
But the problem is HR
From a
office.
county prospect, it was.
It was.
Well, I
Well-
think for some of, I think the HR issues, from payroll, it wasn't. People were, the communication was really good, and people were being paid correctly, because payroll had the right information from HR. But I agree with you that there were the aspects of actual, the HR function of, I have an issue, how can you help me? I do think we struggled there. But the payroll side of it wasn't broken. It was fine. The communication was perfect. Ruth was very efficient in her part-time status, getting information that payroll needed.
And-
So I'm not talking about combining the leadership of where HR works under. I'm talking about putting them together so that they can communicate.
Well, and to me, we've come a long way because we moved from out there, and everybody in this room was concerned about
Yeah.
them being out there and not in here. I mean, that is a given.
I think they need to be here. They need to be in a good location that's away from any elected official. So I'm not talking about, I think we keep the structure the same. HR is under the commission. I'm fine with that. Although most counties, it's under the clerk.
No,
It
the small
is.
counties, it's under clerk.
No.
The big counties, it is not.
Well,
8 and
But it
15
doesn't
and
really
that,
matter.
that doesn't matter.
It doesn't
I want
matter.
to go back to the very beginning. You two ended up having a discussion
Right.
because there was a concern. What
Right.
was the concern? I mean, I
the-
don't know.
The concern was, there have been, almost not a week goes by where we have a new employee that comes into auditing and chews those girls out because you didn't get any of my deductions right. Everything's all screwed up. Then we reach out to HR and say, what about this employee and their deductions? Oh, and then that paperwork comes down. We have that. We just didn't get it to you.
We also missed terminations randomly. We had a termination from an employee that we didn't get paperwork for 2 weeks. Well, timing wise, depending on how that works, we could have been in the process of paying that person if it was an off week to a payroll week. We've had that situation once before where it was an exempt employee. If it's an exempt employee, thank goodness this one wasn't, but if it's an exempt employee, that person gets paid if the timesheet gets approved and ran through the process. So it's just very vital that our office gets the appropriate HR paperwork. And I'm not trying to throw you under the bus. You've got a huge learning curve, and it's not just you. But there's been shortcomings in processes and paperwork communication. And it is by no means a reflection of, I mean, Ryan's had a lot of learning to do, and there's just learning the process of, and the flow of things.
And so then the communication is the problem.
It
In
really is.
In reality, is some communication. And honestly, direct communication instead of coming through us
Mhm.
We've been doing that.
is the key to me.
So I think they've been doing more weekly meetings and things, trying to get that flowing. But I'm flat out sick of, I've been in there 3 different times when an employee comes in and is chewing out payroll, and they're like, we just didn't know. And I'm tired of that.
Well, there's no reason for an employee to come in and chew out another employee. ever.
Right. Well, people get sensitive. They get sensitive about, why aren't my deductions right? You guys screwed up, and they're not being.
They're on
not
probation
being-
anyway,
They're
so
not
if they're
being
yelling at
belligerent. They're
somebody,
just
let us
saying,
know.
why'd you guys screw up my payroll?
Right, well, and not always. Sometimes it's just an employee that changes deductions, and we don't get the paperwork. It can be a long-term employee, not necessarily a new employee. So it's just the flow of items, so.
And that's why bringing them together would solve some of that, because they're in there, they have that, it's easy to just walk from one desk to the other, and not
Mhm.
down the hall is that difficult, but it just makes it a little bit easier, and that's why we kind of had that discussion, and again, change is hard, growth is hard. Ryan's trying to implement some new things, and it's bound to happen. It's just what happens during the change process. So that's why this is a conversation of what's best for
Yeah.
Bannock County. How do we go forward and go from there? Ryan, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize the severity of the problem. I figured that occasionally we'd get some, paper shuffled and not get the payroll as quick, but I didn't realize that employees were coming in and yelling at you, so. But I think we are working on processes to improve that with our weekly meetings, and, it's kind of hard for me to say, because I understand that most places, HR and payroll are together as a kind of a long-term strategy. It makes a lot of sense functionally. But I understand too, as a short-term, that would create a lot of turmoil for your office, which I don't want. Especially being here for 6 months, don't want to create that kind of turmoil for your office. But I think as a long-term strategy, figuring out a way to combine HR and payroll more closely makes what most people do, and there's a reason. It's just our functions are so intertwined that that's why payroll is usually, if you look in the org chart, it's part of HR. But again, that to me would be more of a kind of a long-term thing rather than with term trustees rolled upside down. I don't want to do that at all. So.
Well, like I said, if I'm going to move something, I'm going to insulate something, I actually don't want HR in your office. Because anybody, and it's the same knock of why they're in our office, we need to get them out. I don't want anybody who has to go to see HR, and I actually try and do this, that if I know Ryan has people coming in his office, or if I see his doors closed or whatever, I use the back door. I don't even try and walk by their door. And so the problem is you have an HR office, or an auditing office that has a whole bunch of people in there. And so, like I said, if we're going to take something out or do something and insulate, I want to insulate these guys out in one of the, somewhere in the facility, but away from everybody, so where it's more of a private area. When I worked for Allstate Corporate, our HR people and our payroll people were down there, down a hall. You never had people down there. They're all together in the same, and they're not even in the same room, but they're in the same suite. But it's one of those things that's the level sooner or later we need to get to, is having that insulation for all people. They're not in somebody's office. They're not there so people see it.
And just so you know, payroll has just as much sensitive information happen with it.
Oh, I know.
We have people come in and talk to us all the time, under the radar, asking about retirement. And it's never been a problem that I have accounts payable, because people just come in and talk to payroll all the time for random stuff. So it's not a matter of confidentiality or not wanting somebody to know that they're in.
It's more so people seeing them, and you see it at our office all the time. No,
payroll's different than
I know.
HR.
But what I'm saying with HR is you'll see them kind of, and I can tell when somebody needs to talk to HR, is you'll see them walk by and you'll see them look in the window.
Yep,
and then they'll come back
It's
and.
not the stigma of talking to payroll.
Exactly,
Yeah,
and
right.
that was what I was trying to get at.
And that's what we're talking about, is HR really needs to be in a, and we're trying, there needs to be, that's part of that other conversation. HR needs to be in an area that is not
High profile. Yeah.
So kind of what I've been thinking about that I think would be really a pretty good function is, and not this specific space, but we all know it, and so we can visualize it pretty easily. So if you take 218 over here, that used to be court records, bonds, and fines, think of that room, if that was all auditing, so somebody could go in that door, and HR was where the jury commissioner's offices are, right there. And there was that door that used to go through into 218 from there. That's how I would envision it. So if somebody's going into HR, they can just slip right in and that's it. But then on the other side of that door would be payroll, and Christy, the rest of auditing could be over here. And I don't care who is housed where on the flow chart, but functionally, that's how I would foresee it working. Under the current structure that we have, where HR, because I agree with you, HR needs to be kind of out there, but easily accessible. So if we picture in our minds something like that, not necessarily that specific space, but something like that where HR can be accessed, and yet they are just a couple steps through a door to payroll. So somebody comes in and they do their their orientation, they bring back paperwork, they give it to Shanda. Shanda goes like this through the door, hands it to Keedron, and talks about what this person on the other side of the door just said. Okay, here's the paperwork, and now she's back at it that quick. That's what I envision, and that door can be closed or open and she can zip through it. That's what I would like to see functionally somewhere in this building.
That works for me.
And some of this too, I would need to get a closer look at. One of the trials, as we're talking about location, is we have a bunch of our personnel files, 15 minutes away. down the road. And then I know payroll, you've got, it's almost like a copy of personnel files, and then we have the original personnel files. And I'm wondering if there's efficiencies we can find with planning, right? Where if payroll had access to the actual official personnel file right next to their office, there might, and then our in baskets and stuff, we could come up with processes to, I think, find efficiencies if we were working together.
The only problem I foresee with that is you're gonna have stuff in your personnel files that you don't want anybody else to have access to.
Yep.
Disciplinary items, stuff like that, which payroll's gonna be quiet about, but that's the reason we've got the two separate files, is just simply because.
Tyler have the, in their payroll function, did they have a, does it create a master file that only
It
allows
will.
viewership by,
Yes.
so will that,
It'll be in Tyler's
will that
inbox.
clear up that issue then,
Yeah.
if we?
And honestly, it will be like the official employee evaluations and disciplinary notes and stuff. The more ongoing case issues or the nitty-gritty notes about, investigations and stuff, none of that should belong in the personnel file. So I wouldn't have a problem with payroll or people, with business reasons getting into those. Anyway, that's getting into the weeds.
And they'll be permission-based in the Tyler system
Yeah.
on what he can see.
I think sharing files, sharing some space for the new paperwork coming in, efficiencies.
The big thing that we've had that has been the shortcoming is just employees taking documents home and then having to bring them in. And it's been, Ryan and I talked about this, it's been a process for them to know what's still outstanding and getting it in a timely manner for us to be able to take the appropriate deductions. So that's been one of the changes that occurred with HR that we never used to have. When an employee would come in, sit down, do orientation, here was all the paperwork, they got done with it, HR would go back, make copies of what we needed, and send it to us, and we had it the next day, or the same day actually. That's been a change, and that's been a struggle to try to accommodate people filling stuff out that Ryan's been working on. And I think he's got a process that he's implementing that will fix some of that, but that's been one of the biggest struggles that our office has had, is just not having all of that paperwork. Consolidating offices, we still will have to wait for the employee to turn the stuff in for us to get it to put in the system. So, but again, we talked, I think just on Monday, about sending out the paperwork to the people, and hopefully for those individuals that want to fill it out at home and bring it in for their orientation, that might fix part of that problem. But it's just.
Figuring out the process.
Yeah, process.
Some of it has been processed. But, I mean, when HR was even downstairs before they moved out to South Fifth, we were constantly running back and forth to the HR office. Personalities were different, times were different, things were a little less complicated. Even being house across wasn't horribly difficult. We still had everything we needed. The communication was there when we had somebody going on leave, or somebody not turning something in, hey, know that this person is doing this.
So, from what I'm hearing here, we're talking kind of two different things. A combination of offices. You was talking about them coming under Ryan. In
Oh,
essence,
no.
well, I'm just trying to figure this out here. That was kind of what I understood partly, and then yours.
This is the first, I walk up in here, we're combining offices, I combine command functions and, okay.
Payroll's
Go
not
do
one
stuff.
And,
Yeah,
and then
I
here
don't think that can happen.
was the other side. That's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
bring out here, right here, so that
Yeah,
we're all
I'm-
on the same page, because
You're-
I think there
you're
was
right.
two different directions
Yeah,
that were
literally-
in my thoughts anyway.
Okay, you guys have figured this out and you
No,
guys are moving
no,
off, so, okay. All right, that's what we're here for.
No, and in my simple mind, when I said combine, my simple mind went what you're talking about, but I think in reality, Jason's direction is the right one. If we can bring them into the same space so that we can solve some of the communication issues and long-term I think it's better long-term if they're in the same space for a lot of different reasons. And not necessarily combining per se, but just have them in the same space. Housed.
Yeah, I'm a simpleton. You said combine. I'm like, when I hear the word combine, we're combining by function.
I mean, that-
we're command structure.
I think
That's
I
where
was
I
like-
was when I thought we was coming up here.
I was like, there's no way you can do your job.
Payroll's a finance function.
If you lose,
Yeah.
if you lose
Yeah.
two people, I'm like, you're only getting one back. This doesn't make, okay, we'll give you a second person then, I guess.
So just, if we redefine combine
Right.
and to put them in the same space, I think a lot of the heartburn goes away.
Yeah.
And we can achieve what we want, which is better customer service for everybody, long-term going.
So if you're talking about moving up there, then you're gonna move their entire office up there then?
Yeah, and that's where I started. I can't build one team to tear apart another, and that is, I think we have the personnel. We don't need to hire more people, and yeah, combine. I mean, we need to house them together somehow.
What about I just brought this up to Jason, the back of the public defender's office has their own separate entrance in the back from the parking lot. That's actually where Dave and all those guys came in. Their parking spots were right next to, I don't know if you guys ever walked in back there. That's where their big conference room and all their offices are and all that other stuff is. If we move those around, probation's not gonna need that entire space, because there's like 17 or 18 offices total. And you could wall up in the front, and then you could have HR and payroll, and you have your own door, you have your own.
Payroll's not leaving my office.
No, what I'm
No,
saying is
moving
your
you out
whole
there.
office,
Move all of us
because
over there?
up here, you're all gonna be back in cubicles. For the space up here, you guys going from your office downstairs to your office up here is gonna be interesting. And what I'm
Right.
saying is you're gonna gut this whole floor then, and you're gonna have
Yeah.
to reframe it. Or you have all of that back section of Dave's where there's the two executive offices, there's the boardroom, then you go down the hall and there's 4 more offices down there, there's their break room, there's everything else that's there. And that's what I'm saying.
Pretty nice. Have you been over there?
Yeah, but that an issue with security with all the money and.
Yeah.
Well,
and all
the whole thing is
stuff.
you could build a security vestibule in there a lot
Well,
cheaper than framing this.
Right,
thing.
but
What do you-
we're
what do you
running
mean by-
money.
What do you mean by security?
We're running money across the street. All the money comes to the clerk's office.
Again, what do you mean by security?
So, right now, we have the security of if anybody wants to come into our office and try and take a money bag, they can't. We're in the courthouse. I mean, we've got security buttons, but security's
Yeah.
right there. They're right at the doors. If we go across the street, everybody's bringing us money, and you've got a security door at the front, you've got the back, but we're so open with everybody bringing bills in every day, bringing money in every day. That
All the
financial,
housing and-
and then us bringing money across the street to the treasurer's office because we have to do daily deposits. There's just, and we can work anything out, so I'm not being resistant.
Right.
I'm just saying, you gotta think of the security of how much money is sitting in our office and having to bring it across the street to the treasurer's office. And we've got landfill bringing in $10,000 in cash from, 4 days worth of activity at the gate.
Well,
And
it's
again,
Just some
I mean,
different
you
aspects.
could build a security vestibule is what you call it, is where you would actually frame in, where you'd come in the door, and then you'd have to be buzzed in by somebody.
They've already got that.
Yeah, but what I mean though is HR, one of the knocks that HR has is they are behind security. And so there's a lot of employees that don't have security credentials, and so when they have to come here, everything comes off, they come back in. So is there a way to make that happy? The other thing is there's no remodel then. You're gonna throw up a wall between probation and there's all the bathrooms and everything else, and you're just gonna make a commons wall, and that's it. And it locks on your side, and you guys are locked in, and then you put a security vestibule. That's one way of doing it, but because then you all have your own offices, and you're not going back up here. We're gonna go back into what we just did with 110 downstairs, is you look at the amount of people. So I was thinking, just as we're sitting here, you have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 9, by the time you get everybody moved. And so you're gonna get really tight up here, and you're gonna
Right,
gut
yeah.
that whole thing. I mean, you're talking
Right.
$100,000 remodel now
Right.
to do that. You don't have any windows.
It's too bad that
It's
stupid
kind of-
security or the elevator thing is right behind me, we just move the HR there, but that's the elevator.
But that's what I'm saying is, I mean, the only other option that you have in your current space is you'd have to rip it out and completely remodel it. And again, then you're gonna go sit somewhere
Right.
in a temporary state.
Well, I think right now, honestly, because we've changed the discussion that I thought we was originally having, it's a field trip.
Yeah.
Let's go look. And so that everybody's kind of has the same picture and stuff. I mean, we could go do it right now.
Yeah.
And kind of.
And Ernie, I'm thinking the same thing, similarly, you know, as I'm thinking about what Ryan was just saying, his misunderstanding of how important that is to get to, and didn't really realize that some of that was happening. I mean, some of that may be fixed already just by having this meeting. And so,
Well, I know that we need a place for HR.
Yeah,
It
they
needs to
they
move out of
need
our
a
office.
home.
We need a home for them.
Well, I need you to master calendar because I have an idea for how we would do it.
And I appreciate being able to walk through a door and hand, but you know what? People need to get up from their desk and walk a couple of steps. We really do.
Yeah.
That's just
I'm
part of
fine.
it,
I'm fine
in my
if it's
opinion.
right next to them, or if it's just a couple steps down the hallway. It doesn't have
Right.
to be right
It's just
next
the understanding of the importance of that paperwork getting into payroll so that we don't have those people coming in.
To me, that was an easier discussion. It was just,
Yeah,
to-
sure.
Yeah.
these are some specific needs. And I mean, like you said, you guys are meeting every week. And those things should be easy conversations. If it has to come up another step,
Right.
then it comes up another step. But otherwise, communication right here. I mean, I think we have a very workable team
I do too.
that we gotta forget how things used to be and just continue to make it better. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
But if we wanna go and look at some of these and see, but like I say, and I thought about it, how much did we put in our budget yesterday? $200,000 or something, that we talked about sprinkler systems, and now we're going here, and is that another conversation we need to have if we're
We're gonna do.
changing office spaces and stuff?
Well,
I mean,
and that's the discussion as you come back into a master plan calendar. You look at like arraignments downstairs. That's the biggest waste of space in the entire courthouse.
Yep.
And I'm not saying it's the function, yeah, what the judges do, that's a very important function, but you have.
All I'm
this-
saying is if I'm
The
in.
largest courtroom is.
If I'm in that office and I have windows and it's a nice, I like it a whole lot better than going into a
Yeah.
place that has 0 windows. The atmosphere is better. I mean, it's just plain and simple to me.
And it's set up really well the way that it is now.
You could almost even see too, if we move jury, they could almost mimic arraignments upstairs. Is it the same size? The arraignment courtroom is bigger than this 218, right?
Mhm.
It goes back further.
Yeah.
And then you could almost see. if they
Arraignments
move
upstairs.
Move
up to
start
this
doing
lot,
arraignments
and then
into
redo
218.
Yeah.
the first floor
Yeah.
arraignment
Actually,
office section of the
Do
courtroom.
you know what I really thought was arraignments would go into axe lines, because then you don't have to have a jury box, you can rip that out, and I don't care if there's a pillar in the middle,
Yeah.
because that's the only thing, you put arraignments and axe lines, and you move axe line into this one right here. And because then the problem in axe line's courtroom is the jury box is literally sitting on top of
Right,
the,
yeah.
you can't, I mean, it just simply,
Oh, yeah.
Carrie's talked to me several times, and I mean, you guys have had to deal with it, and, well, it's the PD guys, I guess, the public defenders that have the appellant closest to the jury box, but you can literally sit in the jury box and read what they write. And so that courtroom's gotta have something done sooner than later. And I'd rip the jury box, I'd move arraignments up here, I'd move axe line's courtroom over here. Axe line's mad, because then he loses his giant executive sized chambers,
Yeah.
which are the biggest in the county.
Oh, well.
Oh, well. So.
So,
I don't want arraignments across from our office though, guys.
Why?
In the fun.
Well.
We'll have traffic all the time. Where do I go for court?
Well, but then that's the other fun.
oh, I'm in the hall right now.
I'm just
Where's the clerk's office?
They're down there.
I know.
Every time, where's the recorder's office? It's upstairs. But so there's that discussion. The whole thing is if arraignments comes free, we've kind of doodled, and I've doodled with Dan, is that you could actually give a conference type room on one half. The judge's chamber and the outer chamber could be used for other functions, and then the other half of the arraignments courtroom could support 4 or 5 offices for like an HR suite, whatever. But that would give you then the ability to have like a training room still. This room then could get used for something different, you know, in whatever court functions that we're doing. But I think that would be the best use of that space, because like I said, I've kind of kept track of arraignments, and every time I walk by arraignments and look in, there's nobody in there. There's maybe once a year when there's a big murder trial or something big that you actually get some people in there. But you
That's not necessarily true, though. They do prelims in there, too. So
Well,
they do more than just arraignments every day.
But what I'm saying though is if you're calendaring those functions by function, then you go upstairs and there's a lot of the district courtrooms that sit vacant most of it.
Right.
And I know they have their law in motion on Mondays, but why do all of them have to have law in motion on Monday?
Makes sure that goes on the jail.
Well, I know that, but those are the discussions that we have to have, is I get you're transporting everybody, but is there a transport window that you're changing it from a Monday to a Monday and a Tuesday, or a Monday, whatever? Ada County, when I was talking to some of those guys up there, apparently they have law in motion like every day. Because they're so big, they have stuff, and the guys like, we transport to jail constantly, we don't really, and that's just their life, that's what they deal with. And so for us, I know that everybody's accustomed to having their own courtrooms, and this is the norm how it's always been, and we like it this way, and at this time I'm doing it this, and at this time they're playing golf. But I'm sorry, this is what's gonna have to happen, is we don't have space and capacity to do this anymore.
Well, the court's internal caseload management for law and motion is up to the judges.
Yeah.
And how they want to do it.
Yeah. Well, but what's funny? It's actually the court manager that gets to discuss. The court manager is actually the one that I believe that has the final, Your Honor, you have this window to do it in.
I haven't researched a lot into this,
but
but I know like the ADJ and the district
Yeah.
court, you know, in each district they get together and they decide how they're going to
Yeah.
operate the internal caseload management, like when trials are going to be.
But what I'm saying is the court administrator says what facilities and where you have it at. You can operate, gentlemen and ladies, in this area at this time. Have fun. Figure it out.
I was just talking about when they hold court.
Field trip.
We can go with them. That's,
I don't have time today. I've actually, yeah.
I have an HR roundtable in this room at 10 o'clock.
okay.
Otherwise,
I have a meeting
Yeah.
in 15 minutes.
So, let's have, I feel like even if we didn't accomplish the goal that we originally set out for, I think that we had a conversation that is very beneficial. Since Carrie's not here especially, I'll reach out to him and probably Judge Knapp's and talk about the master calendaring. And I like Terrell's idea, arraignments right there, even though I thought the same thing that Carrie has.
Well,
that's gonna
Is there a better courtroom somewhere to
No.
move it in?
I mean, that's an excellent idea. Axline's courtroom is ridiculous. I mean, it really is. I think that's a good idea. Arraignments usually isn't that busy. I mean, would you think, Brian? I think the worst would be if there was a big prelim or something that one of the
I know
covering
that.
judges or rotating judges uses
Right.
that courtroom for, but
I know they use that for arraignments, and at least pre-COVID, right, we would have a couple days a week preliminary hearings. And
right.
Mhm.
But unless there was a huge case or something, that
Yeah.
that space I don't think would be an issue to you.
About trying to find where to do the other, like arraignments and yeah. I don't know.
Well, I think if you build an arraignment courtroom to, another courtroom to mirror new judge,
Jarman.
Jarman's courtroom, this one would mirror Jarman, except the jury box would be built for a full 12 instead of 6, because then you can hold district court in there. But it would be the same, and then Carrie Hong's office would actually become judge's chambers down here.
Mhm.
Carrie Hong would have to move, but that judge's chambers down there, me and Carrie had already talked about that as an option, him and his assistant can move downstairs if they wanted. Or you could, or you could leave the traveling judges down there and move Carrie into axe lines. You'd split up axe lines both chambers and move Carrie and those guys down there.
It sounds to me like I said, you guys get together, look at combining, whatever.
Housing.
Hey, I was ready to give you like 2 or 3 people or whatever. Well, you can't do this, so if you want people, okay, all right.
Housing is the right term.
Housing,
Okay.
Until that point, for you to know that that's happening, and it's really frustrating on that side because they don't realize that, honestly, the HR dropped the ball. And so these girls are getting in trouble because for something that they had no idea when there were some of those changes or new employees that their deductions aren't right. And they're coming, when they come in frustrated to that office, and I hear about it again and again, that's frustrating for me.
Yeah.
But
I
on
just
the,
say,
on the
yeah, bring
same,
those to me, and I'll try to
on the
help.
same, that's what I was
Yeah.
gonna say, on the same deal, he doesn't know that it's a problem unless somebody speaks to him.
Every
Uh,
time we have somebody come in that doesn't have something, trust me, we have to go to HR and let them know. So we are coming to you every time there's something that's not done, or we just send them to you because
Yeah, that's
depending on the
best.
situation, because if it's something that we don't have, or we just say, get with HR, we don't have it.
And that whole process is being
So-
reviewed and gone through and we're changing it. I mean,
And one of the
the
big
onboarding
changes
and the leaving.
we've talked about before is, and I don't know if it's necessary in this room, but we can talk more about it. Yeah.
Well, that's what I say. I think we have a wonderful crew that if we work together, we're headed in a very positive direction.
Yeah.
So that's what I feel about.
Okay?
Anything else? With that, we are adjourned.